So I just thought I'd put together a really, really quick video just to, I don't know, give you a nudge, the Flexi modules. I wouldn't go so far as to say that people are freaking out about it, but I do want to give you a little bit of assistance because I know that it can be a bit difficult. So I just want to talk through a couple of things that hopefully will help. Now, in terms of process, what I would do is I would do the module. Okay, first things first, do the module, take notes, identify what are the most important things that the module talks about. Forget, for starters, about the creative element of this, right? Don't get caught up in that. Just focus on what are the main ideas that are presented in the module, okay? Write them down, have a bunch of different ideas. Now, if we have a look at this, we've got the ideas. Work out what are the main ones. So not the peripheral, what are the main ideas? What are the big ideas? And explain them. So forget about that second component for starters and just write an explanation of those ideas. Now, it might be things like the characteristics of the community, you know, how important it is to understand the characteristics of community. Or it might be that maybe the main idea is about how to use demographic data, how to understand the nature of the community, how to explore the community. Or it could even be how to run a festival or an event, okay? So write down those main principles and really come to terms with it. And while you're doing that, don't worry about the creative bit, okay? Because that will come all on its own later on. And then once you've done that, you're halfway there. When you have a look at the rubric item for this, basically, first thing you have to do is demonstrate an understanding of the module. So you're halfway done, okay? You're well and truly on your way there. Then what I want you to do is ask yourself the question, how might you use the information to address the project brief, okay? This is an idea creation option. Now, I know that some of you are going, how on earth does farming apply to young people? Well, it's not about how does it apply, it's how would I apply it? If someone stood over me with a big stick and said, okay, you need to take the content of this module and apply it to the challenge of making farming, you know, making young people think that gardening's exciting, then you go, oh, geez, I better work out something. How am I going to use farming, the ideas in the farming module, to think about this? Okay, so think to yourself, someone's giving you no choice but to use the information that you've just written down in this explain bit to influence your ideas. And then you've got to come up with some ideas to do that. Then think about, you could come up with a really big idea. It could be huge. It could be multi-year. It could be a $10 million project where you gradually reintroduce the idea of, I don't know, where you teach your community about cultural competency. Okay, and that somehow that's going to achieve the project brief. Or it could be tiny. It could be an administrative process. You know, it could be something about the way that we communicate. It could be something about including a welcome to country. It could be any number of tiny little things, but make sure that it links to this explanation. So you would say, if we're thinking about, you know, let's say we're talking about an acknowledgement of country, you'd say, okay, what did you learn from this module? And you'd say, yeah, well, it's really important that we acknowledge these things. And so how we're going to apply this is we're going to make sure that we create a way for Kyneton to do an acknowledgement of country that is local to Kyneton. And this is how we're going to go about that process. So really think it could be nuts, okay? It's all right if it's a bit crazy, if it's a bit out there, if it's a bit of a wild idea and you're not sure that you could get anybody on board. This is the place for nutty ideas. But remembering, same as before, it's got a link to this. Okay, so far out, not fantasy. Okay, we're not talking, we're going to bring in unicorns into town. We're talking, you know, something that is possible if you've got enough people behind it. And then finally, it could also be really, really conservative, right? It could be a small adjustment to an existing program. It could be that you look at it and you go, you know what, we've got some brilliant childcare facilities in town and we're talking about community. And so what we're going to do is we're going to work with them to create a, I don't know, a community newsletter, really, really conservative. So you see, you're starting to get the idea that I mean, that it's about taking your understanding, your newfound understanding, and telling me how it is that you could use this. And this is a creative process aimed at kind of getting the juices flowing and coming up with a bunch of ideas, because later on, you're going to be choosing from these and from the others that you've created to build something. Now, I had a quick look through the modules. I thought, I wonder if I can, frame the question a little bit so that for each of these modules. So understanding rural communities. The understanding rural communities module is very much about investigating what's the characteristic of a community, what's the community of the future. Now, maybe you'd actually be looking at leading the community through a process of developing their understanding of the nature of the community. Maybe it's something as simple as that. Health promotion. Use the principles to create a health promotion activity. And maybe if your project's got nothing to do with health promotion, or you think it's not, you can use the principles of health promotion, because in actual fact, anything to do with improving the well-being of your community can be seen as a health promotion activity. Impact of exercise. This one should be fairly straightforward. How could exercise be used to achieve your objectives? Doesn't matter whether it's 95-year-old people in wheelchairs wanting to improve mental health. Maybe exercise, chair yoga or something like that could actually help. Mental health. How could the promotion of improved mental health achieve your objective? It might be that your project is something around, I don't know, improving the income. How could you, what are the implications? How is your understanding of mental health in the rural area? How could that influence that? Maybe this project can actually have this other side benefit if you add a piece to it. Understanding agriculture, we talked a little bit about that. Farming for, 70-year-old grandmas. Communicating well. This one is probably an addition to a project. How would you use the communication principles spoken about to make sure that you're communicating with people with hearing difficulties and other approaches to communication? The healthcare system. This is an interesting one, thinking that the healthcare system is one of the bigger employers in many, many rural towns. How might you take advantage of the leverage of the healthcare system? So you've learned a bunch of stuff about how the healthcare system in the country works. How might you actually use that information to achieve your brief? Maybe you're actually going to use it as a marketing avenue. Maybe you're going to get the healthcare organization to actually start to do something around the mental health of their staff. It could be a number of different things. Determinants of health. This one should be fairly simple. You've got some principles about what predicts health. Now remember, health, it can be a really broad term. So health and well-being, what is it that predicts it and how might that influence your project? How might you use that understanding to think about how you might influence health? Cultural competency, we talked a little bit about that. Disability, disability and Indigenous people's perspectives. You might look at your town and go, oh, look, we've got a really small group of Indigenous people, but that's not an excuse not to engage with them. Okay, so maybe you're actually got a project idea that's about engaging with the 3 people in town that have Indigenous heritage. And with disability, maybe it's actually about saying, you know what, we need to, even though we only have a really small population, really low population of people with a disability, maybe it's about saying, you know what, maybe one of the reasons they're not here is because we don't look out for them. We haven't actually got ramps and access and all of this kind of thing. So think really creatively, but don't get caught up in that. Okay, come up with a bunch of ideas and just choose the best one and write it in a way that shows me that you've understood. Okay, that you've understood the project brief. Now, obviously, you're going to do that twice. So 2 500-word pieces. If they're not exactly 500 words, it doesn't matter, but 1,000 words in total. But I do want two halves basically, because they get given even weighting in as we're marking them. And you will obviously, after that, you're going to engage with the bringing it together. So your group will get together and pull these ideas and go, okay, which are the best ideas? And maybe we can combine a number of these ideas together. So just to quickly reiterate, most important thing, understand the module. If you do that well and come up with a bad idea, then you'll still do okay, right? But first, understand the module and then make sure that you really think carefully about your project brief, the brief that the community gave you, and work out how you might apply that information to the project brief. I'm really looking forward to seeing these ideas. I know that coming up with ideas is tough, but this is also a really important skill for working in the 21st century. And that, that's where you're going to work. So being able to come up with ideas is an important skill to develop. So I will feel free to email me questions. I'll be answering emails on Wednesday and Thursday next week. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in class the following week. Thanks.